Hey everyone, this is Chris. Welcome back to the channel. I want to have a chat with you guys about escaping the worker mentality, sort of the odd job experiences that I had when I was a kid, and what it takes to move forward. You guys may or may not know, but my family was killed in the Vietnam War, and these sort of experiences shape who I am, and it's just part of my history. Um, when I was a kid, I baled hay. It was because the people around me were basically farmers, and when you need money as a kid to buy school clothes, school supplies, this sort of stuff, that's what you have to do. And if you don't know what baling hay is, it is a very, very difficult job. Basically, though, sharing with you what I had learned from it, there are four people to do the job. There's one person who drives the truck, there's one person on top of the truck who basically stacks the bales, and then there's two people on each side of the truck that pick up the bales and throw them into the truck. And the bales are really heavy. The interesting thing about this is that we were all paid the same. And one of the things that I learned very quickly is that pay does not necessarily equal the amount of work that someone puts in, right? The person, obviously, I'm sure you can figure it out, driving the truck is going to be the best job. All you have to do is just, go forward. That's all you have to do. And you sit in the shade, etc., while the other people who are, say, lifting the bales of hay, I should say, are getting sunburnt and also getting exhausted. And hay can be really itchy, and it's a horrible job. Don't recommend it. The other thing that is important with that one as well is you are essentially not done until the whole field is clear of hay, right? Until you put all the hay in the truck. The other thing is too is when I was a kid, I used to pick berries. Berry picking, if you know, it's like over in Oregon. They have strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, any kind of berry under the sun. And the basic gist of how you are paid is that you essentially pick a bunch of berries, put them into like a box, and then you take a box and you take it over to the farmer. Basically, they weigh your berries, and then you get paid on how much you picked. And one of the things that happens is that they keep a card and they write down like how much you picked, and then they will calculate your pay at the end. But you're essentially paid on how much you work. So if you go to the berry field and you don't pick anything at all, you don't get paid anything at all. And sort of the mentality of worker that you get into is like, oh, I pick this many berries. How much are you getting paid? And then they weigh it for you, and then you go back and you think, okay, I gotta pick more berries. I gotta pick more berries, right? The hay bale job, you're thinking, okay, I want to get the job where I can drive the truck, and the berry thing, you want to pick more berries, right? But both of these sort of jobs, you're just in worker mentality. Now, I want to keep going and just share more experience that I've had, and it'll all make sense in the end. The next job I had when I was a kid, I worked a lot of sales retail, and essentially when you're in sales at retail, you sell what you have in inventory, because essentially you work on commission, at least the job that I had. And if someone comes in the store and they want to buy, say, for example, like a radio, but you don't have that radio in stock, you don't get that sale. If you really wanted to help the customer, you would send them to the store that has said radio, but you wouldn't actually make any money on that. And so you end up really trying to push stuff that you have on inventory. And one of the things that I learned with that job is that basically salespeople are dishonest. I don't know the way to put it. And I've always hated sales jobs, and I will never do that again. But I'm just telling you, it's there's some dishonesty in there. And I think anyone who's worked in sales, you would know these kind of things. And this is also the kind of structure that happens when you get people working on commission, and also too as well. And then you have people on the sales floor competing with each other, stealing customers if you think a customer is going to buy something, that sort of thing. And again, that is worker mentality. Jobs I just described to you, be it baling hay, be it picking berries, be it working in retail sales in a store. Oftentimes in being a worker mentality, you're saying, okay, how can I make more money as said worker? My mind actually didn't really change until I went to college, and I took a job as basically a deli worker where you make sandwiches for other students essentially. And one of the things that I learned very, very quickly is social class is a huge differences in society, right? So when I was a kid growing up, basically I was around a whole bunch of poor people. So I had very little exposure to wealthier people or educated people, very little exposure. And when I went to college, essentially like after class, right? So say in class, I'm just keeping it real, I was really, really good student. I was a rock star essentially in school. And then after class, then basically the rich kids can go, and they can go play lacrosse, they can go swimming, they can go on dates, basically go hang out with other rich kids essentially. then I would have to go work at the deli and basically serve said rich kid sandwiches. And it was a really it was a really, I won't say humiliating experience, but um, I guess eye-opening experience. And I guess you call it humiliating if you want, but it was an eye-opening experience on sort of how I was missing out on opportunities, right? Because reality was, for example, and sort of why I want to have this conversation with you, is if you go back to say the berry picking thing, if your mind is worker, you just want to pick berries more and get as much money as you can. However, what you need to be doing at every job that you work in is figure out, let's say the berry picking, for example, is like, okay, how can I be the farmer controlling all the workers? How can I be the farmer who owns the land? Like, how does that system work? How does the price of berries fluctuate? Where did the said berries go? What do you do with said berries? Or for example, with the hay situation, right? At the time, if you're just a mentality of worker, you're thinking, okay, how can I be the driver? But your mind should really be, how can I own the farm? How can I design the truck that's going to bale hay without people? How can I, improve the efficiency of said thing, right? I think he says where I'm going with this. In the retail situation, right? I'm just a salesperson on the floor staff and thinking about how can I maximize my salary. But the reality is to be more like, okay, where did these radios come from? Who designed says radios? Can I be that person? Can I own that company? Can I own that store? These kind of things. And sort of why I'm bringing this up to you is with going with, say, the deli situation, you start to realize that the gap between educated and uneducated will get wider. The gap between rich and poor will get wider the older that you get, and you'll start to see it a lot more. And so I'm sharing with you so that I didn't come to this realization of like, oh my God, I'm a worker. I don't want to be a worker the rest of my life. I want to get beyond being a worker. And essentially, we're talking about social class, right? This sort of thing. And so one of the lessons, and I already explained to you, but I want to give you more general rules in this thing, is like any job that you take is think about what is the overall system and function of how this company that you work at or the organization that you are working at, how are they making money? Where does that value come from? How are they generating cash? And sort of like, how is that thing started up? And sort of what sort of connections and networks do they have? So for example, we'll go back to the farmer situation, is if they're baling hay, where's the hay going? Who's transporting the hay? Where's all this stuff going? And I understand, like, well, how do you grow hay more efficiently? Which company's making said fertilizer, et cetera, right? I want you guys to get my point of view on this thing. I want you to think about like the larger picture. This is how you pull yourself out of the worker mentality and start to understand the systems. And this is sort of why, if you watch my channel, why we do the news every day, because I'm trying my best to like get you to understand the whole system. If people just say, oh, Chris, I don't want to understand the whole system, I just want to do X, like a really, really small part of the world. I just don't know what to say. Part of what I've done for years as a professor is try to educate people to not be workers, to be leaders. And if you want to be a leader, you need to understand how the whole system works. Also, too, right, you want to start exposing yourself to people who are well-connected and work within essentially how to control the whole system and talk about said system, et cetera, or changing it, or people who have influence, I guess is a better way to say it, because workers isn't where it's at. And I mentioned the college thing with the deli is because as I started to learn more about the world, I started to want to associate more with said people that were going to be more influential, right? And oftentimes the biggest barriers, to perfectly frank, when I was young was money. I don't have how else to say it. For example, I was offered internships at senators' offices, but I couldn't take them because they were unpaid. And if you don't come from a wealthy family, it's really difficult, basically impossible to take said jobs. I had internship offers at the White House. I'm not making just random stuff up. But I couldn't even go to the interview. It was in Chicago at the time, and I couldn't even afford to take it. I had to stay at my stupid deli job or whatever in the summer, and it was like that every summer in college. Basically, all the rich kids go, either be it their great internships at Goldman Sachs or in government, or they just take vacation to Europe, this sort of thing. And I had to stay and work in the deli on campus. And so, I'm not trying to give you like a sob story. I'm just telling you, just like figure out a way if you want to be successful in this world to move beyond worker mentality. And I know oftentimes money is a real barrier. I believe me, guys, I faced it. It's a real barrier. And this is sort of why when I shared chats with you guys of like, hey, I went to the same school as Elon Musk, or I went to the same school as, Ivanka Trump. Ivanka was there when I was there. It's like, I understand, like, not everything is based on talent in this world, right? Connections matter quite a bit. And if you, unfortunately, because of money, are unable to access said connections, it becomes really, really tough. you can pull yourself out of the worker mentality if you put yourself in a position to understand how the system is working and understand sort of where your opportunities are, where the doors are, and sort of what's holding you back, right? Because sometimes I think what's frustrating for me is I'll hear people say, "Oh, Chris, if or anyone, if you just believe in yourself, you can do anything that you want." And it's not necessarily true, because just believing in yourself is not going to get you anywhere if you're not meeting the right people, right? If you're not taking the risk to go to the right city, if you're not making the connection to get to the right jobs, et cetera, and keep moving forward in your life. Because oftentimes I think the way to think about it is oftentimes people are thinking, okay, how can I build a better mousetrap? Whereas I'm thinking like, okay, why do we even need a mousetrap, right? And so I know I said a bunch of different things in this thing, but I just want to get you guys a sense of ideas. Is you want to be thinking about how can you transform your life, the people you hang out with, and the way you think about what your opportunity is as soon as you can. The sooner you can change your world thinking about how everything works and how you can be part of it, the better you will be. So don't focus on essentially picking as many berries as you can. Focus on how can you own the berry farm. How can you be the people who are transporting said berries? How can people are trading said berries on markets? These kind of things. And so I hope you understand my point of view in these things. I know I express class frustrations quite a bit in this channel, but it's hard. It's hard to explain if for people who haven't seen the different levels that I've seen. I've seen all levels of society. You guys have no idea, like all levels, right? I promise you, Elon Musk was not out picking berries as a kid. I promise you that, right? He grew up in apartheid South Africa, and he was on the privileged side of apartheid. And then his mom was like, supermodel kind of person. Family was from Canada. Her parents were flying around in private planes. I'm not just making random stuff up. And I don't know. I'm just talking free. Sometimes I just feel like talking free to you guys on YouTube, and I know most people don't have these kind of perspectives. And I can share all kinds of story of going to the Ivy League and stuff like that. But the thing I want you just to share though is that you don't have to be a worker all of your life, right? I grew up as poor as you can possibly imagine. You have no idea, and it's funny because looking back, like when I got older, for example, you meet kids that are from really, really wealthy families. And, when they're in high school, they don't have to work at all, right? And they're in grade school, they don't have to work at all. So they can just spend all of their time studying or learning hobbies that other rich kids do, etc. And I guess the main thing is, I don't like complain about this kind of stuff all day, every day. It's just more, how can I provide, my kids with that kind of, I don't have kids, but just for example, just how can you provide your kids with those kind of opportunities as soon as possible, right? Meeting the right people, being in the right hobbies, moving to the right city, being in the right school. Do that as soon as possible. How can you put yourself in this said position as soon as possible to, again, be in the right hobbies, meet the right people, get the right education, all of these kind of things. And so I hope you guys understand the message of this thing. I want you to escape the worker mentality and understand why I try my best to give you an education, and why when we talk about the news, how the world really works. So I know this was long and convoluted. I'm not going to really edit this that much, mostly because I want to have just a natural conversation with you guys about this topic. And I talk about this stuff in the classroom quite a bit, actually. So anyway, thanks again for watching. Love to hear your thoughts on these things. I know it's complicated, but I'll catch you guys in the next video.